Oh, wow. Lots of people coming in already.
That's awesome.
Hi, welcome everyone. It's like a stock ticker.
That's fun.
Hi, well, everyone's rolling in. Yeah, continue. We'd love to hear where everyone's tuning in from. I know we've got a lot of international attendees today, so it's just really cool to see that you're awake for such an exciting session.
Seriously. Wow.
This makes me want to travel again. We'll give everyone a few more minutes and then we'll kick it off.
Culver City. That's near me right now.
It's actually one of your puppies tuning in.
Yeah. I wanted, to make sure that some people would be here, so I asked each of them to log in.
Oh, amazing. Okay. Well, people can still continue to roll in, but I'll go ahead and kick off just a couple of intros, go over some housekeeping. Hi, everyone. Welcome to week 2 now of Planoly Presents Summer Content Camp. Today's workshop's called Social Scrapbook, which is all about creating scrappy content. I'm Tarina Lam. I'm here to be your guide on this magical content ride today. I oversee content and channels at Planoly. So creating impactful, scrappy content on the go is, a skill I love to keep sharp. And I know it's something, a topic that our community is eager to learn more about as well. Wow, it's just going. I can't stop looking at this ticker. So super excited to have so many of you guys join already. This will be recorded, so in case you have to drop off, we'll email you guys as well, just so you know. But yeah, so hosting this workshop today is Rachel Carton. Rachel is the leading social media strategist who many, including myself, consider the queen of scrappy content. In the social media manager world, like, I'm not kidding. I know she's someone who's really paved the way for creating visually engaging content, just, with only what you have around you. And that's not an easy skill to develop, but I think after today's workshop, we're going to walk away maybe, almost as good as Rachel is. So if you're wondering, how do I create more social content without always needing a glossy photo shoot, this is the right place to be today. Welcome, everyone. So I'll go over some housekeeping. We're covering a lot today. So, continue to enter in the chat box where you're from. This is just really great to see. Hi, if we missed, yes. So if you missed any seminars, don't worry. We're going to send you out a link to today's workshop and previous workshops. If you're new to the Planoly world, welcome. We're super happy to have you. Planoly is a incredible visual planner for Instagram. We've grown into like a leading social marketing platform with over 5 million users to visually plan, schedule, measure your content performance on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, Pinterest, the works. I first heard about Planoly from another social media manager. She was running Sugarfina's account, and I remember her showing me the visual planner and being like, this is crazy and makes things so much easier. And years later, I work here now, and so it's just funny to have things come full circle. I'll just share a little bit more about, why I love scrappy content and why Planoly kind of helps, social media managers like myself keep track of everything. You know, one of the best features I love actually is our placeholder feature. So if you've used Planoly before, you know, you can plan your entire Instagram grid ahead of time visually and put placeholders for content that you're going to have upcoming in the future, so you can still kind of keep your grid intact and give you a holistic view of what you're going to schedule ahead. So if you want to try out my favorite feature, we're going to drop in a discount code in the chat, you know, for you to try all of our premium features and free features on us for the first month. So go ahead and save that code and continue to share, you know, who you are in the chat. But if you want to share your industry, your business, where you're coming from, we'd love to get y'all to connect and share your Instagram handles and Facebook in our Facebook group instead of the chat, just to keep the chat clear, so that there's opportunities for people to ask questions and keep the focus on Scrappy content today. So please join our Facebook group. That's where we'll take the conversation offline in a different place, so you guys can stay connected going forward. Great. And if you have any questions during the workshop, make sure to add them in the Q&A section of the chat box. That's where we'll go at the end and answer some questions. If there's some we can answer quickly, we'll go ahead and do that from our team, but you'll hear from, you know, we'll have 15 minutes at the end with Rachel just to get, you know, answer any questions that come up from the session. So really excited. So we're about 7 minutes in, and it looks like we've got quite a bit of attendees. So it looks like everyone's had a chance to log on, and we can just kick it off. I will mute myself now, Rachel, so you can take over.
My screen. Cool. Thank you guys so much for being here. I am really excited to talk about this topic. I think it makes sense maybe for a quick intro on who I am and just where I've worked and why maybe I'm somebody who can speak to Scrappy content. So in college, I didn't study social media. I think a lot of social media managers that I know also didn't study it, but I did have a love for it just like in my day-to-day life. I had a food blog, I had a Tumblr, and I wrote a college submission essay about how I was good at writing Facebook captions. It made sense at the time, but so I've always had a love for food and social media. So my first job out of college was working at a company called Plated. It's a meal kit delivery startup. It is sort of similar to Blue Apron, if you're familiar. And when I started there, it was in 2013, which was a time where I think social media was just sort of like beginning to have buy-in and sort of people realize that they might need social media managers. So when I worked there, I did their HR, I did their customer service, and I did their social media. But eventually I was able to make a case to run their social full time. And so I worked there for about 3.5 years, really building their social media from the ground up. And then I made the move over to publishing. So I worked at Bon Appetit magazine as well as Epicurious, and also launched their brands Healthyish and Basically on social media. And when I got there, it was really like editors were just sort of taking turns, you know, scheduling posts. There wasn't a huge social media strategy. So I really sort of set that and hired an amazing team, and really got to build sort of Bon Appetit social media presence for around 4 years I was there. And then I left in last August, and I started my own consulting business. So now I work with brands on their social media strategy, really helping them sort of identify everything from their voice and tone on social to what their goals are on social and what platforms they should be on, and also what stories they should be telling on social and what their sort of like, you know, buckets of content should be. And then I also started a newsletter on Substack called Link in Bio. It is a social media newsletter that has over 11,000 subscribers of pretty much people who work in social media or care about social media. And it really features the people who are doing the posting. I found that when I would read articles about social media, in news outlets, they would often interview like the CMO or the head of marketing. And I really wanted to hear from the people who were actually the ones strategizing and coming up with the social plan. So it's a really nice place to just get to hear from other social managers. So that's sort of a little bit of background on me. And I think, before we talk about how to create scrappy content, I think it's important to sort of establish how to think about social media and how I'm defining scrappy content in this sort of workshop. So I've always believed that social media is storytelling. I've talked to brands, I've worked with brands that think of social media more as like a distribution channel. So they think of it more as like, we're creating this content somewhere else and we just need to use social media to push it out. And that's sort of the relationship. It's thought of like, search or like email marketing. And I've always thought social media is bigger than that. It's storytelling. You should be creating original content for social media. It's its own sort of living, breathing thing. And so, if you think of social media like that, then if you can tell a good story, you can create good content. I don't think that you need some insane budget to create good social media content. I don't think you need the nicest camera. I think you need to know how to tell a good story. And that's really all that you need. So when I think about what scrappy content is, it isn't, the second best option. It's not just like making do with what you have. It is a specific style of content that feels relatable, that feels fun, that feels real. And yes, you are making do with what you have, but that's the point, and that's why I think it actually does well. Because I think that in the past year or so, we've really seen a shift. Specifically with like TikTok, I think that we've seen that people want more of this like of the moment, less curated social media content. I think when you think about Instagram, even a few years ago, you think about a really curated feed, people obsessing over what their next post is going to be and if it makes sense visually next to the other post, which I think is fine to think about, but people really would rather prefer engaging sort of this like off the cuff content. It can be made in your childhood bedroom. It can be made at the beach. It doesn't matter. But if you're putting sort of this like personality and a good story behind it, that to me is all that you really need. So to me, storytelling is more important than aesthetics at this point. Realness is more important than curation. And really putting a personality behind your brand is more important than sort of this like royal we brand voice. And I think that this shift happens to be really good news for small brands who rely on scrappy content. So if you don't happen to have the biggest budget, or you are the founder of a company who doesn't have a social team, this shift into scrappy content, off the cuff, real content that even big brands are starting to adopt is really good news, because you, I think, have everything that you need to create good content. So with all of that being said, I'm going to go over just some tips that I've learned along the way in terms of creating scrappy social media content. I think that this workshop could be like an entire day and go into depth into each one of these. So if it feels a little bit, it's glazing over, it's probably because it is, but feel free to DM me after, to email me, or get in touch in some way if you have any questions. And also after this session, you can always ask more questions. But so I think in terms of creating scrappy content and thinking about what content you're going to make, it's important to take a step back and think about what is our content strategy on social media. What are our goals? So are we a product that we want to sell? Are we a lifestyle brand and we just want people to really engage with our social media content and we don't need them to leave the platform? Are we a magazine and we need people to click the link in our bio and we need to get traffic from social media? What are our goals? And what are the recurring sort of series or content buckets that help us achieve those goals? So really, I really believe in creating these sort of content buckets or series or recurring sort of posts that ladder up to these various goals that you might set. So this sounds a little bit like vague. And so I'm going to use an example from a brand called Omsom. I love them. I don't work with them, but I think that they do an amazing job on social media. And if I go to their Instagram, I can pretty clearly see like what their content buckets are. They have cooking reels where people, community members, people who work there are cooking through using their products. It's a like Asian starter kit, so it helps with cooking and bringing really great flavor to your food. And so they have people cooking through, showing how to use that product. That probably ladders back up to creating engaging content, showing people how to use their product as the goal for social. Then you'll see that they have these text-based slideshows. They kind of dive into the history of the marketing of Asian food in America, and they are a little bit deeper topics, but are still kind of done in this voicey way. And so you'll notice that there are a lot of these on their feed, and that probably ladders up to a goal around educating the customer about how Asian food has been marketed in the past and how they're going to use their, voice on social to sort of combat that. You'll notice that they have these funny tweets and memes. It shows probably the lightheartedness of the brand, a kind of nice like counterpoint to some of these maybe more serious slideshows. And then of course they do have product images, more straightforward product shots. I see a lot of brands who might just go straight to the product shots and only show what their product is. But what makes me love Omsong on social is that they've chosen all of these buckets that are laddering up to different goals that they are playing within that goes beyond just what their product is. So I really think thinking about who you are on social, what are the stories you want to tell? How can you bring people service or entertainment that goes beyond what your core product is? And that's really important to do, I think, before you start making any content. So in terms of actually creating the content, I really, really think that all you need is a phone. When I worked at Bon Appetit, that was like really the only tool that I had in really any of my jobs. So I think as long as you have a phone to record on, to, upload your photos, all that kind of stuff, that's all you need. But in terms of like leveling up, these are some of my favorite tools to use when creating Scrappy content. So quickly, I'll go through. Visco is an amazing photo editing app. I have like 3 filters that I typically use for my personal feed. It just keeps things consistent, makes food look better. Doesn't need to be like a heavy filter. It just is really nice in terms of just like tuning up your photo, I would say. InShot is really helpful for editing reels and editing TikToks. I've found when I edit those in the app, sometimes it'll crash. It can just not be the best user experience. And so InShot has been really helpful on like my phone. I can just edit those videos and upload them right into Reels and TikTok. A macro lens is helpful if you work maybe for a beauty brand or a food brand where you really want these like nice up close shots. I think especially like on TikTok, you'll see these sort of like ASMR visually like up close shots. And so a macro lens for your phone is a great idea. A ring light, but mainly the tripod. So if you're filming content, alone, or you don't have somebody who can be your camera person, or just need to do maybe a trend where it requires that your camera is still, then having a tripod is a great idea. A tool like Planoly, I think like usually if you're creating Scrappy content, you are having trouble probably strapped for time. So having a planner and sort of like a place where you can schedule your content, I think is helpful. And then lastly, I really recommend following @creators on Instagram and @Instagram for business. This is not an ad for them, but I think that a big like trend that I've seen is that small businesses sort of, there's like a lot of like misinformation about the algorithm and about how Instagram works and how they rank posts. And I've seen just recently like Instagram really try and break down those rumors and myths. And so just following those 2 accounts can be really helpful in terms of there being like a source of truth around how the platform works. And I think that's like one of the best things that Instagram has done recently in terms of just making sure that there's not a lot of misinformation about how to use their tool. So yeah, this is something that I feel like I could probably talk about forever. So I'm going to try and sum it up. But like when you're shooting content, whatever it is, I think that there's a few rules that I go by, and that is natural light is often better. When I was shooting food for Bon Appetit, I would always bring it over to the window. I would make sure that I had a lot of like natural light streaming in. I don't want shadowy content. I want it to be gorgeously lit. And sometimes that can be like embarrassing if you're like somewhere where you have to pick it up and bring it over to the natural light, but I promise you that it is worth it. It just looks so much better. Get lots of cuts and angles and options. Again, this is like obvious, but at the same time, I've been in situations where I'm shooting for social and I know I need a certain shot, but I feel like I'm not like, because I'm holding a phone, that like I don't get to direct, and really just like being comfortable directing and knowing what sort of angles and shots you need, especially if you're shooting for Reels, TikTok, feed, story. It's going to require sort of different visual languages. And then anything can be a background or backdrop. I think like when I'm at home, I have this one table that I can shoot on, but just starting to get creative. I think that our like photo team at Bon Appetit taught me this, but like, um, I have a robe that I shoot on sometimes, and that's like weird that I'm shooting on my robe, but nobody knows that it looks like a cool like textile that I bought for, it could be a dining tablecloth, who knows, but it's my robe. And so just finding different backgrounds, textures that you can shoot on, just to sort of diversify what, your backgrounds are in your photos. And so it's not all the same. So I think, when I talk about social media being storytelling, then obvious question to ask yourself is who is telling that story? And in terms of creating scrappy content and working with what you've got, I think that the strongest thing you can do is put a personality behind your content. And really thinking about for your brand, like who is that person that's telling that story? And sort of becoming the face of your brand to a certain extent on social. So I'm going to use 3 examples of brands that do that and do it well, and how they're using sort of a different person to tell their stories. So the first is Calma, which is a florist in Miami. I used to work with her at Bon Appetit. She runs this floral studio that's amazing, and it's just her running it. She also understands how important social is and that it's important that she's on social. So she has sort of found a way, despite being extremely busy, to create a lot of amazing social content. So she'll come on and do tutorials. So things that aren't even, necessarily connected to her core business, but she'll do things like how to reflex roses, which is a fun tutorial of learning how to like turn roses inside out, or how to style grocery store flowers. And so she'll create this sort of extra content that is sometimes I think her most shared content. So it's a way to market herself, and it's also she's just using her own personality to really lead that. She will also, take us along, to the flower market with her, and that's something I always tell small business owners is like show what you're already doing. Like you're already going to the flower market at 5 a.m. Take us along for the ride and capture some content while you're there. It doesn't need to be the most beautiful content, but get a fair amount of it so it feels kind of like a story and that you're taking us along for the ride. Another thing that she does well is uses like the question sticker. She engages her community and asks them what they want to see. I think that I recommend following her because I just think she does a great job of using herself as a personality. She knows that she doesn't, have like, she's not going to book a big budget photo shoot for her flowers or for creating stories, but she just puts herself out there. And I think it's a really wonderful example. Another example is hiring somebody to be the personality of your brand. If you're maybe a bigger brand and have the resources to hire someone to be that face, I think that the Washington Post is a great example of this. This guy runs their TikTok. He's the face you see on their TikTok. He runs it almost as if he's a creator and not, running a brand account. And so he's responding to trends. It's happening in his apartment. It's not sort of what you would imagine, how the Washington Post would react to TikTok. And I think that's what makes it so unexpected and good. And you feel like you kind of get to know him and you see him on your TikTok and you're like, oh, I know that's Washington Post without even looking at the handle. So that's another option. And then Our Place as a pan company, and they have done a good job, I think, of letting their community tell their story. So they will work with friends of the brand, fans of the brand, and they will do, kind of mini cooking walkthroughs with them. And they're not necessarily, I would say, like influencers by the technical definition, but they are cool people that you want to get to know because Our Place is highlighting them, and it creates a nice way to, get a nice diverse set of voices and faces and personalities on your feed. Whereas if you look at Washington Post, there is just one person. So I think that's another option of really thinking about, does your brand have a big community or a group of people who are, already super fans that you think that you could either pay to work with or get them to create content for you is another really great option. But I really do believe that putting a personality behind your brand is not only good because it is scrappy, you're already there, you're the person behind it, but it also is what people I think are craving on social media right now. They want that personal connection. They want you to break that fourth wall a little bit. That being said, you can still create scrappy content that's not, personality based. And I think that in terms of shooting content, I think that just making it visually interesting and unexpected, I think is my biggest tip there. And I think that these brands do a good job of that. Gold, which is they do skincare, and they do sort of like health and wellness. And this is a example from their Instagram feed of a new drink that they had. And I love this comment that's from their founder, Trinity, that says, this is what I end up doing on my lunch break. So she just went out to their yard and took this photo. And there's a video also of the beverage being poured, and noticed that these flowers matched the color, and just sort of created this scrappy, vibey, cool content. And just like by going out into her backyard and going out into the world. So thinking about, do you live near a nature sort of area where you could shoot your product, or is there somewhere in your yard too that you could shoot? And thinking about unexpected places to shoot your product. This example from Coco Kind I like, and I've seen a few beauty brands do this, but taking a mirror and putting your product on a mirror and facing it up towards the sky. I've seen this multiple times. I've seen some beauty brands taking things to the beach or putting things like in sunlight and just creating this sort of like ASMR-y visual moment. But this technique of using a mirror, I think, is sort of fun and feels like high value, but you could take this with an iPhone. And then finally, outdoor voices, I think they, similar to the Our Place, they are an outdoor company. It makes sense to see their products out and about in different, national parks, hikes, whatever it is. And so I think that they have either ambassadors or influencers that they're able to send their product to, and then they bring it out into the world for them. So instead of, scheduling 1 million shoots across every national park in the US, they're able to tap into people who are already, hikers, outdoorsy people, and either send them or pay them to wear their clothes in those places. And it looks really natural, and their feed just feels really kind of like out in the world. About if you have a product that could be out in the world, and you have a community that you could send product to shoot for you, and thinking about influencers and content creators not only as people who post your product on their feed, but thinking about them as people who could create content that could also go onto your feed as well. I really like this example from Glossier. I hope it plays, but it is their social manager for TikTok showing how she creates scrappy content. And I think it's a fun look at how she creates content, but it's also fun to see how she turned that then into a really successful TikTok for them.
Behind the scenes of filming a Glossier TikTok. Looking for the least dead grass in my yard. Why was this low-key the hardest part? Lugging my equipment and supplies outside, #independent. Just call me Greta Gerwig. I use a piece of acrylic to shoot close-up swatches. Today I was filming cleanser concentrate. All you need is a 10x zoom lens and a dream. I'm just a girl, standing in front of her block, asking them to ignore her. The final product.
Anyway, I just think that's a fun example of seeing sort of how it gets done, but to me, even stronger of an example of show people what you're already doing, break that fourth wall. Don't be afraid to address your audience. I think people want to hear from social managers, and they want to know who's running these accounts more and more. So I love that example.
Behind the scenes of filming
anyway, another sort of content bucket that I really like and is sort of low lift, and I see a lot of brands using it well, is sort of this mood board. So thinking about when you were creating your brand, what were some of the visuals that inspired you, and are you able to craft sort of a content bucket around that? So I think the only thing that I will say about this is be sure to ask for permission to use any of these things, and being respectful of the artist who made them. I think that's so important. So never regram on your brand account without asking. But if you do get permission to post, I think this can be a really strong way to make sure that you are keeping up your posting cadence while also, sourcing content that's super easy to execute because it's been executed for you. So some brands that do this well, Parade, which is an underwear company, loosely related to bras, obviously, but it's visually intriguing. It's inspiring to them and probably related to either like a colorway that was coming out or a new release. Gia, which is a non-alcoholic aperitif, is really inspired by Italy and aperitivo hour. So this is an image that they sourced and posted. Again, like if they had shot this on like a photo shoot, it would have been a very expensive photo shoot, but they were able to get permission to post it, and it adds to the overall sort of aesthetic and vibe of their Instagram page. Ami Collet is a beauty company. Before they launched and really had any content, they would, source a lot of content. And I think that this was a fun one where they, in the caption, asked the audience to share, it's 2001, what song are you listening to, or something like that. And it's just a fun way to engage your audience, and also a really kind of nice way to gather content that's already been shot for you. It's already been made and adds to the overall sort of aesthetic or, energy of your page. And then the last thing is design. I think that when I see, designed assets on brands' Instagrams, like my mind doesn't immediately go to Scrappy, but I think that designed assets actually are some of the scrappiest content. So if you are able to invest in sort of your visual language and design up front, you'll have these sort of like easy to execute feed posts. So some examples of that, Brightland, similar to the OMSOM example, has this template that they then put sort of more viral tweets or posts onto, memes onto, that they can then share, but it still feels connected to their brand because of the template, but then is able to share these sort of like, less designed tweets within it. Necessaire has this really simple template, but then they share these sentences that sort of relate back to their brand that feel, really connected to them. These are sort of shareable sentences as well. And I think that, thinking about for your brand, are these sort of these quotes or, more text-based moments that would make sense for you to share? Because these are posts that are really, comparatively easy to get up and to post. Teen Vogue as well, posting resources, thinking about, how OMSOM also does those resources. Is there some sort of, something that you as a brand want to educate people on? Is there an opportunity to design sort of a template for that? That was a lot quickly. But I think that to recap, I think it's really important to come up with a content strategy, what your content buckets are up front. Don't be afraid to show personality. That can obviously be intimidating, I think, to some, but just getting comfortable in front of a camera, especially if you are the only one running your social account. I think just like letting people know that you're a real person, breaking that fourth wall sometimes is a really like humanizing, nice thing you can do on social media. Obviously find creative ways to create, intriguing visuals, thinking about, do you already have a set that can work to shoot your product on? And then, source content, looking through the mood board that you made when you originally started your brand, and then adding in some designed elements too. Not only are they like easy to execute posts, but they can sometimes break up the more like photographic elements of your feed. So that's the quick Scrappy content sort of how to, but I'm happy to answer any questions. And I also just want to like leave on a positive note that I really do believe that you have everything you need to create compelling content. I think I talk to a lot of small business owners who feel overwhelmed or like they just don't have a team or they don't have what they need, and you really do. And I think that it's just about thinking about, what are your customers tell you that they love about you or your product, and really like creating series or creating social moments around people, what they already love about you. So thank you guys so much for coming. I really appreciate it. This was fun to do, and I'd love to answer any questions that you have.
Awesome. Rachel, I loved all of those examples because I think the first thing that I realized is, want to share that scrappy content doesn't look scrappy. It's more about how you put it together and how it comes to life. And so I loved all of the tips you shared. the Q&A box is blown up. So I'll kind of, spare you the read through and kind of highlight some of the ones that I saw come up a couple of times. Something that 3 or 4 people have asked is that, how do you advocate for, to your stakeholders or leadership that there's value in creating scrappy content. You don't have to hire videographers for everything that goes onto social. And so what does that conversation normally look like?
Yeah, I mean, I think that for when I worked at Bon Appetit, like when I looked at our top performing Instagram posts, it was almost always the iPhone photos. And I think that probably was not fun to hear for like our art department who's out here, putting on these amazing shoots for the magazine. But I would even tell them when they were on the magazine shoots, I'm like, can you take some photos with your iPhone? Like, I want the iPhone photos. I don't need the like perfect lighting set vibes. I want the like messy, I want when it comes off of set. So I think like for me, when I was trying to advocate for more of that type of content, it was thinking about using like numbers to your benefit, and whether it's asking friends who work at a brand who does, utilize scrappy content for like, do they perform better? Are those more engaging posts? Or if you have tried it out and they have performed well, really building a case with numbers. I've found that like in terms of advocating to higher ups, like using analytics and numbers to really help make your case is important, because that's typically the way that like, a head of marketing is thinking. And I also just think that there's some great articles out there and building a case with like, well, this brand's doing it. So, I think that that's a helpful sort of way to, go about it.
Yeah. Yeah. If you haven't had the chance to create those, less than perfect shots, show all the competitors or people in
Yeah,
industry who are doing something similar and getting a lot more engagement for a lot less
exactly.
work.
Yeah.
It's really fun.
Yeah.
The other question that came up a couple times is, what are the difference between content buckets and content pillars, and what's kind of that magic number of content buckets brands should try to aim for?
I mean, I think of content buckets and content pillars as being pretty similar. I think about the way that I think about it is like, what are your goals on social? And then what are the content buckets that you're going to create to like ladder up to either one of those goals, two of those goals, but making sure that all your goals are sort of addressed with a different content bucket. I think that, brands I've worked for and consulted with, I think that, on a platform like Instagram, having 4 to 5 strong sort of buckets that you're playing within are a good place to start. And you can always like layer them on, take them off. I don't think that it's like the end of the world, but to me, that's a good sort of strong place to start. And thinking about, you know, what is there a content bucket that you have that just is for reels? Is there one that's just for Instagram stories? And it doesn't have to go everywhere on that platform, and really thinking about that bucket and what's the best sort of tool in the platform to tell that story.
Awesome. A couple of questions were around folks who don't have a physical, tangible product. So they're either a nonprofit, like a museum, they're in real estate, they have coaching services. How do you shoot scrappy content when there's not a physical product?
Totally. I mean, I think that almost that's better for what I was talking about, because I'm saying that, personality is key here. And if you are selling a service, then education and putting your personality forward in terms of education on social media is a really good place to start. I think like on TikTok, I see a ton of education. I see doctors on TikTok who are like educating in a fun sort of new way of like, it's very unexpected to me. So if you work in a field where you are trying to educate people about a issue, about a political organization, about, real estate, like use your knowledge to create educational content that feels fun on social media.
And then what about the flip side? Got a couple of questions around, I manage a luxury brand who, may not approve of having scrappy content, or how do I create scrappy content without degrading or diminishing the value of the brand?
I mean, I think that I've always said, like you need to meet people on the platform where they are. People aren't going on to Instagram to look at a lookbook for a fashion brand. They're going on to see, like, what's the vibe of this brand? Who's the, like, what's the energy of it? And like, creating engaging content is like thinking about how do people use that platform and how do people want us to use that platform. And I think that Balenciaga is an example who I think I've seen use like social media in a really cool and sort of different way. And so they still are doing new innovative things, but they're still sort of meeting people where they are on the platform. And they're not just trying to take the thing that they shot for YouTube and like cram it into an Instagram video. They're shooting for the platform.
And kind of related to some of the other questions is, how, you talk a lot about having a unique personality, whether it's channel specific for Instagram versus TikTok, but how do you identify that personality and consistently stick with it?
I mean, I think ideally, if let's say you're a founder, it is your personality and it feels raw and it feels real. And I think that, when you think about influencers and why so many people follow influencers, it's because they show, the good ones at least, a whole sort of breadth of what their personality is. And so is there some of that sort of realness that you can bring to your social media channels? I don't think it's creating necessarily a personality that of who you are on social. It's being real. I think that Ellie, who works at Calma, will say when she's like stressed and when like she needs to shut off orders because she has too many. And so like just being real on social and not trying to be, some perfect version of whatever you think people want to see.
Yeah. And I guess like getting a little bit more tactical here, someone had a question on, in your experience, how much time did you spend creating content versus scheduling it versus doing the 70 other things you have to do?
Yeah. I mean, I think having a team, like when I was working as a solo social manager, it was really hard. And I think my biggest thing, if you're like a person who manages a social team that is one person, it would be like hire another person. So I think as soon as I had a team, I was really able to delegate and then be like, can you go shoot this, or I'll go shoot this while you schedule. But it's really, really hard if you're a solo social media team for a brand to do everything. But I would say that it was probably 40% of like shooting content and 60% in terms of like scheduling it, editing it, getting it ready to go live.
Yeah, we have a lot of users in our community who are honestly just entrepreneurs. They manage their social media just when they can,
Right.
while running all of their businesses and other priorities. And so, what's your go-to tip for creating Scrappy quickly on the fly? And how do you edit your content?
I mean, I think that Instagram stories is like the best place for creating Scrappy content. And like I said, like I think that thinking about things that you already do and how do I turn that into its own series, I think that the going to the flower market is a great example. That's something that she's going to do every week regardless. So can she just turn her camera around and show people what that's like? Like that's a place that I never go. I don't get up at 5 a.m. to go to the flower market. So it's a unique place for her to showcase, and she can just turn her camera around and create a quick story with that. I think that I've talked to an artist before, show your process or do a time lapse of, you painting. There's just ways that you can think about things that you're already doing and turn your camera around and turn that into an engaging piece of content.
Yeah, I love that. Some people, this is a really specific question, but it made me laugh. But if you can answer it, that'd be great. Or if you have any other recommendations, but people are really curious on how you get that robotic voice on TikTok. I think there's only one. But also, with using templatized audio, what are your recommendations on figuring out what that next trend is in audio templates?
I mean, you get that, I think, by just using the audio, and I think that you can like hard press on it and it says like play out loud or something. Maybe on my story I'll show, but it's like if you type it out, then you can like get it to show. TikTok is really, you need to be a consumer of it to be on it. I really think like there's, it's not like an easy place to just like jump into and try and create content for, but I have seen some brands, especially there's this restaurant called Giada, spelled like Giata in LA, and they're a scrappy small team and it's their team running their TikTok, but they're just constantly responding to trends, doing the trends, thinking about, okay, we're a sandwich shop, what's our way into this trend? And somehow they always find a way in that feels funny and different. And they're always on my For You page. I think they have like 5,000 followers there now. So if you are a brand who knows that your audience is on TikTok, wants to be on TikTok, then be a consumer of TikTok and really, if you see a trend, think about what's our way in. There's usually always a way in. So just constantly sort of asking yourself that.
Yeah, it can be overwhelming to be on TikTok and Instagram and understand Reels. And so what are your tips for our community who are trying to identify like, okay, which channel is best for my business and where should I really invest my Scrappy content strategy?
Yeah, I think thinking about where like who your audience is, what audience are you trying to address? If you want that younger audience, I think then being on TikTok is important. And I think that a lot of people write off TikTok as being just an awareness play as opposed to a e-commerce play, because there's no sort of like direct like swipe up type things like that are on Instagram. But I've seen like businesses changed from like one viral TikTok. So if you have a product that you feel like has a good story or that you feel has the potential to fit into a trend or whatever it may be, then like you should be on TikTok. It's like it can change businesses like lives overnight. I know that there's been like even mainstream products that sort of go viral, like the Outdoor Voices dress is just like a TikTok trend essentially at this point. And so if you are an e-commerce company, I think like you should not be writing off TikTok in terms of selling product.
Yeah, I definitely agree with how TikTok can change your your distribution overnight.
It's crazy.
It's insane. What do you have any experience either like with, a client or just something you've seen in the past of how you actually dip your toes into that? Like I've had, we've seen a lot of customers ask like, how do I become that viral it product? How do I find those small influencers to actually showcase my product? I mean, is there really like a long strategy behind it, or is it just happening per chance?
I mean, I think some of it's definitely luck. I think that the TikTok algorithm works in mysterious ways. But I do think like I said, like to me, TikTok, more is better. Throw shit at a wall, try new things, like just don't be afraid on there. I think that I feel like a lot of brands are nervous to just let go and just try the weird things that are happening on TikTok. And the ones that I've seen that are successful are the ones that just say, okay, maybe we're the buttoned up brand on Instagram, but we can have a lot more fun on TikTok and we can try new things and we can be weird and be really like personality driven. And so I think that, that's one end of it, what you can do like for your brand. And then on another end of it, I think that working with TikTok influencers is not, a bad idea. Seeding product is never a bad idea. I'm a big believer in terms of like sending product to community and in terms of, working with influencers. And there's a ton of really genuinely like influential people on TikTok. So being a, consumer of TikTok and kind of understanding who those people are, I think is important.
Yeah. You've kind of touched on this in your presentation, but I think it'd be good to give an example. Someone asked thoughts on dealing with a marketing team who wants to overbrand everything. So how do you find, that, how do you advocate for, okay, like we've branded it and we tested it and it didn't work. Here's, in addition to numbers, like here's why this strategy makes more sense to be a little bit more human and relatable.
I mean, yeah, I think it's hard anytime you have to like prove something to somebody that is, like doesn't work in social, but also manages social. So I think that, you know, examples are again like a really big thing, and asking them to think about what brands do they love on social. And I promise you, they probably don't love any brands that are like over branding themselves. They probably love the brands that are being fun and different and unique on social. So using that almost as a way to get them to think about what do they consume. I feel like that's a really good question to always ask, is like, well, what do you follow? What are the brands that you follow? And sort of using that as a way to start discussing, like, well, you notice that this brand actually is not putting their logo on every single post, or whatever, you
Yeah.
know, that means. So just having a dialogue and asking them what brands they respond to.
Yeah, no, that's actually a really great idea, is to flip it and
Yeah.
ask, what do you like and what do you like about it?
Yeah, it's
Um,
tough though.
So just gonna wrap it up here with just one more question. You know, wellness and having boundaries with social media is an important pillar for us. So would just love for you to share how you honestly avoid burnout, managing social, creating content, working with clients, whatever it may be.
Yeah, I mean, I think that it happens on two ends. I think that there's one end of it that is things that you can do yourself. Um, and it's, you know, creating boundaries and making sure that, you know, you keep your screen time down, and there's all of that kind of stuff. But to me, I'd love to see like more of a shift in terms of companies thinking of their social teams, mental health, and thinking about them of, you know, you know, uh, honoring time off, not saying, oh, can you quickly put that post up and then you can take your vacation the rest of the day. Hiring a consultant or a second social media person to be on the team so they can cover for you. Understanding when there is something that is traumatic happening in the news, like the social team is the one that is sitting there absorbing it all day, and we don't really have the option to log off. So thinking about setting time off if they've had to sit there and consume this news all day. Or I just think that, yes, there are things that you can do as a social manager, but there's really only so much you can do. It's your job to be online. And so how can companies, I think, better support their social teams in terms of their mental health as well?
Yeah, I feel like that could be a whole other workshop from you.
100%.
Just really helping, you know, companies and employers identify that they are just as much responsible for helping um, make wellness a priority. So
Totally.
well, Rachel, this was really incredible. I don't even think we could get to all of the questions, but you know, just a reminder for the folks, we will share this out via email. If you've registered, just make sure you haven't unsubscribed to Planoly emails, or check your spam just in case. But Rachel, we super appreciate all your tips and sharing all these incredible examples, and really being candid with your experience and what you know, how you've kind of done this well the last almost decade. So yeah,
Yikes.
everyone. Well, now you know, when the requirement to hire someone is 10 years of social.
I'm going to be right in there.
Yeah, you're like, this person actually exists now.
Exactly. Thank you guys so much for inviting me to be here. And thank you to everyone who watched. I really appreciate it. And you can DM me or message me or whatever you want to do to ask any other questions. So I really appreciate it.
Yeah. And if you guys all want to stay connected with each other, again, join our Facebook group. A lot of people share their handles and their businesses and share tips and all of the good stuff. So look forward to continuing the conversation there. But thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
All right.